back. Episode 2 of Starting from Scratch. My name is Nick Ganley, and I'm here with my partner, colleague, and mentor, Tyler Patterson.
How you doing?
And also, we have a special guest today. It's Mr. Kale English. Kale is joining us. We know him most prominently as being a member of Ambrit Properties. He's also a fundamental partner in Partners Real Estate. Kale has a military career, and that kind of led him to get involved with a couple different startups. And now he's actually a government accounts leader with a well-known company called 3M, global manufacturing company. And he's got an impressive resume of being an account director and just handling a ton of business. And we're meeting with him today specifically to talk about his foray into real estate investment in the past few years. So Kale, I appreciate you joining us.
Glad to be here, guys.
And Tyler, you just want to give some background on how you and Kale kind of met and started doing some work together?
Yeah, so we joined. He told me that he was looking to invest into single family homes, multifamily homes. So I had a couple of deals, and honestly, how we met was I fed him a couple of deals. We kicked it off from there. We had lunch at McGlynn's here locally, and we just talked, and we had both the same kind of mindset and perspectives of what we wanted in life. So we just kind of clicked, and now we've been just doing some business together.
Awesome. Yeah. So Kale and I, we were kind of catching up before we started the interview, and one of the first kind of questions I had was, in real estate investment, we were talking about this last time, Tyler, it's really important that you can't really do it halfway. You know, you can't really be half cocked when you get into this, when you get into any new venture that you're trying to get after. If you're someone that's watching this and you're thinking about getting into owning some properties or looking into wholesaling or looking to investing, it's not something to be done casually.
No, you have to be all in or nothing. There's no halfway stepping into this. You have to be all in when you get into this business.
Yeah. And we were talking about, and a word that Kale used that I'm kind of going to probably latch onto a little bit is intention. So Kale, can you kind of speak a little bit on the importance of intention when it comes to real estate investment or just in business in general?
Sure. So you think about strategy and tactics, right? And so there's a big difference between laying out a strategy and being tactical for the execution of that particular strategy. And in order to execute, you have to begin with your strategy, following all the way through your execution, and you have your tactics in the middle. The only thing that's going to get you from point A to point C is that intention. How are you going to get there? Okay. And so you brought up this do or die mentality. The do or die mentality, especially with entrepreneurship, especially with any kind of business execution out there, you have to have that do or die mentality. There is all or nothing. There is no quitting. There is no saying, all right, I'm going to pop my head up, look around, and I'm going to fail. No, you cannot do that. You have to really weigh out your risks, right? So what are my risks here? Well, my risk is, I buy $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 worth of real estate, $1 million worth of real estate. And no, I'm just going to go ahead and fail. I'm going to go ahead and put my wife, my kids on the street, and I'm going to go ahead and fail. That's suitable. No, you have to really be intentional about it. What does that step A look like? Step A1, A2, A3, A4, B, 1, 2, et cetera, et cetera. And how are you intentional about executing on that path? Even better yet, how are you going to learn? How are you going to create an after action report? In the military, we used to call that an AAR, right? We still do those in my corporate America job under a different name, but it's putting together that after action report. How are you going to be intentional about what you did fail in or what did you not do as well in order to execute better the next time? How do you leverage that intention every step along the way?
Now, here's a question. When I see a lot of people, especially when it comes to getting into a new venture, is they plan, and then never act. How do you find that defining point from when you've reached the end of planning and you're ready for action?
That's a great question.
Is that a good one? It felt
That's
good.
a fantastic question. And, I've had people surrounding me my entire life saying, Kale, you just take action on things.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to, because that is the only way that you're going to succeed. If you don't take action, well, there's not going to be a result. So even if it's a failing result, right? Even if there's no intention, there is going to be a failure because you never took action. You have to take that action. So what I would say is set your foundation, mitigate your risk, think about your risk, and say, all right, am I mitigating certain risk factors? And is this going to be an investment? They call it an investment, not a guarantee, because there is risk involved.
It actually goes back, Nick, to that first rental property deal that I did, where it's just take action. I told you 2 weeks ago I wanted to get into real estate investing and rental properties specifically. You brought me the deal. So it's either now you take the action or you don't. And I just sat there, wrote the offer, $500,000 of real estate invested, and said, here you go, here's my offer, sight unseen. It's about taking action.
Yeah, I would almost go a little further than that, though, because here's the thing. You guys, you take the time, you gain the knowledge, you study under people, you get as prepared as possible. But when an opportunity comes out, the ability to correctly gauge and assess the opportunity and then have the confidence to act on it. I think that's what makes the real difference. What do you got going on over there, Tyler?
Dogs.
Is that a dog or a child?
Dogs.
So you hear what I was saying now?
Yeah, so
it's
I
like
hear
you've gotten all the way, and when the opportunity comes up, to then pull the trigger.
Yeah, absolutely. And I say this too because I'm also speaking for myself, but I just wrote, I think, 2 offers for Kale this week as his agent, sight unseen. I just said, hey, here's an offer. 5 minutes later, here's my offer. You know what I mean? So here's the property. 5 minutes later, here's my offer. Hasn't even looked at it. Here, let's send it out. It's just about that action that we know what we want. We can run those formulas. We can run our plan. We know how these things work. We've done enough properties and knowledge and things to we know what renovation costs are, what we're really realistically looking at. And so we can put number to paper and create this offer.
But here's a whole nother thing, right? So I look back on my investing career in real estate specifically. I'll even go back even steps further. I've had transactions in the stock market where I've lost $80,000 over the course of an hour. I've also had transactions where there were some major losses there. There was also major gains.
Options and puts, calls and puts. Is that what it was?
They were condors, yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, you have to take that action to learn. And what I learned in day trading, for example, was you have to take that action and you have to lead those actions to experience, have that after action report and say, all right, I let my emotions get control of me here. And that's why I pulled out, or that's why I made that particular trade that I did. And I'll trace that back to real estate investing 2.5 years ago when I bought my first property, 714 East Division Street, Dover, Delaware. Okay.
Ooh, that's right. Down in Division.
1903 build, bought it for $93K. It was worth about
when did you buy this?
$150,000, and it needed a ton of work. The rehab, we were planning on swinging the hammers ourselves, which we had to, so that we didn't lose a dime in the house. Had a back in-law suite that was going to require $40,000 worth of work. That's to this day sitting there because it would be a sunk investment. It would only bring up property value by 30 grand. But so my partners under Ambert Properties, Alex, Anthony, and I, we lovingly refer that first investment as a school of hard knocks. Mm-hmm. That's where we truly learned. So it was that action. We didn't lose money, thank goodness, because, we were in there doing the work ourselves. But one could argue that we lost a ton of opportunity cost. Mm-hmm. But it was the worst property. It was the property from hell It was 2-3 nights every single week while I had a 1-year-old and a wife yelling at me saying, "Is this what real estate investment's all about?" And no, seriously, there was an ultimatum that was laid down.
I get it.
So what did you learn from that property?
What did I learn from it?
Yes.
I learned, number one, know your numbers. Number two, don't swing hammers. Number three, every single month that you're working on it means that you're losing a month's rent. Number four, Division Street is not the best street in Dover, Delaware.
That's a hard lesson learned.
It's funny you say those because I have the same exact things. I used to, and mine kind of relates to my first investments. I built a crew and I paid them hourly, and I maintained, and I was a GC basically, so I controlled it. Now in my real estate career, I have a GC where I talk to one guy. He does all my maintenance. He does all my properties, my renovations, and I have a property manager, obviously, but I deal with two people that handle my entire real estate rental portfolio. And it's so much easier because I can keep continuing to bring new business in and not have to worry about it. Make sure we hit our numbers because the GC is going to make sure we hit our numbers for the most part. And it's huge. So many investors, when they get started, they think they're going to go ahead and do all the renovations themselves. But what they don't realize is the time it takes you to do it all yourself. You're better off spending 3 or 4 weeks with a GC knocking it all out, because the interest you're spending on the loan, you make back tenfold.
Well, not only the interest in the loan, but also the missed rent, right? So if you're renting a place out, so if you're flipping it, absolutely, that's the case. But if you're renting it out, think, we held this property for an additional 3, 4, 5 months longer than it should have been. 5 months at $14-15 a month. Last time I checked, that's a heck of a lot more than what we would have spent on a GC.
Yeah.
And you mentioned opportunity cost.
Mm-hmm.
The value, the added value that you bring, not swinging a hammer, doing what you do best, which is finding and executing deals.
Right.
Because you guys aren't, contractors, at the end of the day, well, we're here to do business, and you have to do something which Tyler taught me, which I'm learning more and more every day, which is find people that can do a good job and then let them do their job. Correct.
I see it across multiple facets of business. So in addition to having my day job, I'm also a consultant. I also have a consulting business. And one of the biggest ways that you can see any job fail, whether we're talking about real estate, whether we're talking about government business, whether we're talking about anything under the sun, is not letting people do what they're an expert in doing. If you allow those people to be an expert and do their work as an expert, you're going to succeed.
So let's just bring it back to a center focal point. Right now, Tyler, you're pretty much rental oriented, right? I mean, if a flip opportunity is there, but
I got I have 2 flips that we're going to be flipping. Mostly everything else is rentals.
And Kale, I'd say the majority of what you guys do is also focus on rental properties as well.
I can't stand flipping properties, even though that we've done 2. I hate selling stuff. I absolutely love putting a nice family in there, solving a problem for a family, putting them in affordable, safe housing, something that I wouldn't mind living in if my house burned down, and holding that for the long term.
I think that's extremely contrary just to the public image of what real estate investing is, because you don't see a lot of glamorous TV shows about there of buy and holds. It's all fix and flip.
Because it's not sexy. Real estate rentals are not sexy, right? We do the minimum to renovate these properties. They look good, but they're not flip sexy, right? Where the tiled showers, the backsplashes and all that. So it's not a showpiece, but it's actually long-term wealth is what it is. And if you're patient, similar to investing into the stock market, real estate rental investments are long-term wealth. You don't make all your money up front. It's all about the long-term gain.
I don't know. I'll push back on that just a little bit.
Here we go.
So while the flip is way more sexy for TV, right? So we came in, we did this awesome tile backsplash and this quartz countertop and this, that, the other, and we made $170,000 out in the high real estate value area of California. Well, you know what? If you burr a deal here in Delaware, 160K all in, you're at 120. You just made $40,000 equity. And oh, by the way, in 30 years after that note's paid off, that property's most likely going to be worth around $300,000. So I would beg to differ and say, hey, you know what? That rental property that you just did that doesn't look as sexy, right? That's actually way, way more sexy when it comes to math. And when it comes to math.
But I agree with you 100%. That's why I'm.
Oh yeah.
I'm just saying, rental properties aren't as sexy. He's asking why it's not broadcasted as this, holds, right? It's more fix and flips and sell. That's what everybody talks about. That's what you go to get programs on and all this stuff, the TV shows, because that's sexy. The whole flip and hold is not a sexy business, but it's a gain of long-term wealth is what it is.
Yeah. Well, people
is
think
episode 2, right?
Yeah.
Of the sexiest show in real estate.
That's right.
What's that?
This is episode 2 of the sexiest show in real estate, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I think the sexiest thing for the majority of the population is instant gratification.
You're right.
Yep.
And so when you say something like 30 years from now, most people can't think, 3 weeks from now.
Mm-hmm.
It's all right now. This is what I want. I want to see an instant return. So that's pretty much why I think that public image is skewed that way so much. But another big question I had for you as well, Kale, is that we're talking about being all in on multiple things at one time.
Mm-hmm.
You have a day job, a pretty serious day job from what I would call it. Can you talk about a little bit about what you do for your day job?
Sure. So I manage all healthcare sales through my medical company into Department of Defense, Department of Veterans Affairs, State Department, FEMA, basically all your federal government agencies. There is a mountain of different government contracts, all regulated by the Federal Acquisition Regulation. Basically, highly specialized. I'm highly specialized in this niche market from the age of 18 years old, from the age of 33 that I am now. I've been 100% focused on doing business with the federal government. And right now, between the legacy business I was a part of and the new business that bought us out, that entire book of business is worth about $90 billion or $90 million a year.
Yeah. So that's no, small day job, to put it lightly. And so you're now a partner in 2 different real estate companies. Mm-hmm. And we talk about having to be all in on what you do. And we talked a bit about how that's possible and how you make that possible, which is working with a partnership.
Yep. So partnership is key to me. And I think that we brushed over this in the very beginning, but so just in the course of my day job, so I'll give you a little overview of life, right? So, wife, 2 young children, a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old, an extremely taxing day job that I'm on the road traveling from city to city to city, multiple times a week, having these larger client meetings, as well as interacting with about 700 individual sales reps across the United States and driving that strategy forward for the federal government segment. So there is a taxing day job, there is a taxing family job, right? And the family is what truly brings me joy and why I do all this. So those are my number 1 and my number 2. But how do we actually execute in real estate? Well, that's by a partnership. So one could say that I could go after a single family home, a 30-unit apartment complex, whatever that may look like for you, a storage unit. But I only get, for one of the partnerships, I only get 33% of that. So there's actually 3 people rowing for one person in that given situation. On the other side of the company, for partners real estate, we have a 50-50 partnership. It's actually 49%, 51%. I have a minority ownership, and that's for a reason. We can get into that from an investment standpoint. But essentially, while I'm traveling in the air, my airtime is dedicated to prepping up for my next meeting, listening to real estate related podcasts, and executing on that next SOP that's going to drive the company forward. But I'm out of communications. So who's dealing with the title company? Who's dealing with the tenants? Who's dealing with the project manager? Well, my partners are, and I couldn't do it without them.
What do you think about that kind of setup, Tyler, versus the lone wolf setup?
So I'm a little bit different. I've done partners before on different things. I prefer to be sole. I would do a partnership, but on a bigger deal. As far as single family homes go, I can feel like I can put the pieces in place. Again, I'm a full-time real estate guy though. Mm-hmm. So it's not anything for me to handle an attorney, to handle the lender. I hired a property manager. So you're saying you get 33% of the rents that come in on your rental properties with Ambrit, but why couldn't you buy them yourself and hire a property manager, pay them less than what you're getting for that 33%?
You're absolutely correct. But kind of going back and developing, when we originally started this business, you think about the risk model, right? So we each put in $40,000. We started up the company with $120,000. Mm-hmm. $120,000 was enough to do one deal at max, right? Yeah. Yeah. So we had all of our eggs into one basket. Remember, that was the school of hard knocks, right?
Yes.
That first deal, 714 East Division Street. And in order to get through that,
he's going to say the full address every time, so you know.
Oh, I will. I know them all on the back of my hand. But you know, it was through that partnership that we also mitigated risk, because we were all newbies when we came into it. Sure. Didn't know the first thing about real estate. Tyler, from your side, you knew quite a bit going into it. We didn't know.
It's okay. He still stumbled, so.
Soup to nuts. We didn't know any of that. But what I would say, though, is even driving forward, and the reason why we have remained a partnership, even in doing these single families, is that we all actually have taxing day jobs. Anthony, he travels out of country for up to a month at a time, where he is just 100% out of pocket. Alex, he works for a small business where he's part owner of that one. And that's an extremely taxing day job. So if we can spread that workload out, and typically how we do it is we'll go on buying sprees. We'll buy 2, 3, 4 single family homes at a time. We also have a project manager, Joey Stamp, and he's also my business partner on the partners real estate side. He's been instrumental. He's been the GC of sorts that Tyler was talking about. So this team that we've assembled, we all have our roles and responsibilities that have been carved out, which I believe is the foundation for that larger deal, that larger 30 unit, 50 unit, 100 unit deal.
So it's been mutually advantageous for all of your unique situations to work together, because none of you alone could achieve what you have achieved together. So
correct.
Exactly. Yep. And it's a good example of, you know, I'm a full-time real estate guy, but not everybody is a full-time real estate guy. So how could 2 or 3 people that have full-time jobs, because let's be honest, when you get started, you're not getting rich off real estate investing.
No.
Right? It takes a long time to really get into that position. But as you're building, you've been able to continue to work your jobs that continue to pay your bills. You live off that money that you make, but you're also still investing and reinvesting your money and taking the power of 3 people, put it into one business. So it's a good model for people that do have jobs and are looking to invest into real estate, because like you said, 30 years from now, all you guys will be, you know, multimillionaires.
What's really cool about it too, and what I've really come to learn about being in the real estate network, right? So having started out 2.5 years ago, the network just in real estate, a brand new industry that I had known nothing about. This industry has blossomed to 100+ connections, and it's been amazing. You two are two of those 100+, right? And what's cool about the partnership is that we can take the network from Alex, from Anthony, from Joey, and from myself, and we're broadcasting what we're doing across our own personal networks that have no overlap, right? And so now as we start building this foundation and as we're starting to source that friends and family money, they want to know what the four of us are doing. And do we have credibility in our day jobs? Well, we do. Now we're building this credibility into real estate. Now we have that. Now, how do we put those together in a resume of sorts and really go out there and source that money out across 4 different networks, not just one?
And that's an interesting point too, because so I get loans for my houses, and that's how I fund them and everything like that. Whereas you're raising private money. Same idea, mine is private money, but done through a lender, whereas you're actually raising your own private money, skipping the lender side.
Well, so we use a number of different finance sources. Nick, I don't know if you want to get into financing or not.
I would love to. I enjoy nothing more than talking about numbers.
Sure. So
let's do it.
So we have money from essentially 4 different sources. So number 1 is private money. Number 2 is hard money. So just like any other hard money lender, we work with a great guy out of Pennsylvania. He's a national hard money lender, extremely easy to work with. And that was through networking that we found that gentleman. Number 3 is our own cash. And then number 4, and I think what the differentiator here is I've actually been able to use my own 401k money. So hold on tight, ask me any questions as we go through this process, but it is such a remarkable process that I believe if leveraged properly, and I'll give the disclaimer here, right? I'm not an accountant, I'm not an attorney, so this does not constitute
this is personal experience
legal or financial advice. But so what I've been able to do,
now I'm on the edge of my seat.
Yeah. So what I've been able to do is take my 401k money, roll that into a self-directed IRA. So through a custodian, and I'll plug these guys, ETC, is it ETC? Yeah. Equity Trust IRA, self-directed IRAs. And basically, so took that amount of money, rolled it into a self-directed 401k. Now I use that self-directed 401k to issue promissory notes as a private investor against the business. So I'm in charge of the terms on that. Is it going to be 8%? Is it going to be 10%? Is it going to be 12%? Whatever that may look like. I know that my 33% share or my 49% share of the company is going to have to pay that interest back. So I have to kind of level that out in my mind. I also have to think about what that overall term is. Is that going to be a 1-year note? Is that going to be a 3-year note? Is that going to be a 5-year note? So essentially, what's been really cool is that I've still got this retirement plan that's sitting out there of money for future tomorrow. So when I get to the age of 59 and a half, I still have this nest egg out there that I'm going to be able to draw on. Okay, well, what is that doing for me today? How is that building up my rental portfolio? Well, so in talking with several lawyers, several accountants, because I am not a majority stakeholder in either business, and because a friend or because a family member is not, me bucketed with a family member does not constitute a majority stake of the business, I am able to leverage a promissory note into one of the businesses where I am a member.
You can invest in it, essentially.
that I'm investing in. So
Yeah.
I'm not investing in a piece of real estate. I'm investing an unsecured promissory note that into my business.
So you're investing money into your business against your 401k, which gets, let's say, a 6% return, 5, 3.
I charge them a bit more than that.
Okay.
That's his retirement account, man. Come on now.
I'm saying your 401k gets a gain of, let's say, 3% a year, maybe.
Yeah, let's say 6 to 8% on it.
Okay, so 6 to 8%, but then you're leveraging that money to then turn it over for an 8 to 12% return on the same money that you're making 6 to 8% on.
That's correct. And oh, by the way, if you take a look at the IRR on the Burr deal that we just did, right? So made 40 grand in equity. So yes, I have to carve that up 3 ways, or I have to carve that.
And then you're a third or you're a 0.5% owner of that real estate property.
And oh, by the way, then there's also cash flow on it too. So the way that we pay out that promissory note back to my 401k is by refinancing it and completing the Burr process.
It's crazy you brought that up, because I know exactly what you're talking about, and it's a pretty uncharted territory for most people. But I was looking into a property that was in care of custodian, which ended up being equity trust. I get emails from equity trusts all the time with self-directed IRAs, and it's a pretty aggressive approach for an IRA as far as investment wise, but it's definitely an option that's available, and that's creative financing. That's, finding solutions for problems and
honestly, what he's doing is I would average to say he's making about 20% return on his 401k.
Correct.
So I've done the numbers. I'm a math nerd like that.
Yeah.
I love to see, what's actually coming in the door. So if we, let's take a 1-year note, 100 grand. Let's make numbers super simple, super easy.
Mm-hmm.
And so $100,000 note goes out at 10%. That means that my company has to pay back my 401k $110,000. Okay, that's a return of 10%. Fantastic. Now we deploy that against an asset that maybe makes $40,000 on paper after the burden. So that's 1,333. So that's essentially 13%. Okay. And then you have to amortize that overall cash flow. So if it's cash flowing $300 a month, that means over the course of the year, and follow my math here, I'm making an additional $1,200. Mm-hmm. So that's an additional 1.2%. So at the end of year number 1, and only year number 1, that's 25% return on my 401k, or to myself.
Mind you, the same 401k that's making you 6 to 8% on a standard year.
That's right.
So you're making that on top of the 6 to 8% gain that you're getting in your 401k anyway.
But I would argue that the best advantage to this particular tactic is that you're still fulfilling that nest egg, but on the other hand, you're also building a long-term asset that's throwing off cash flow right now.
Did you also say something about taxes, Tyler?
So tax advantage is that because you don't have to pay the taxes on your 401k to borrow that money to put into your business.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, right?
You're funding your business with your 401k. So you're pulling money out of your 401k. And typically if you do that, you have to pay taxes on it, but you don't have to, because then you're refunding the money back in.
That's correct.
That's an amazing system.
Yeah, you better study up on your math before you even start playing around with stuff like this, because just like any business, it's all math. I don't care if it's what I do with my landscaping company. My brother's talking about, oh, they don't teach me this stuff in school. I do math all day long. Yeah. Is doing material costs, doing profit margin, labor costs, just even taking square footage of areas, triangles, circles, rectangles. It's all math all the time, any business. And you're talking something bigger, which is into finance. How do you school yourself up on financial tactics and how to just navigate all of that? I mean, like you said, none of you guys are real estate professionals. Tyler, you know a lot about loans and and all of the financial numbers just from doing real estate.
I learned it.
Yeah. I mean, just even like Kale, I mean, I guess it's from conferring with people smarter than yourself, I guess, is how these things are done. But there's so many different things in finance, different avenues and plays that you can do.
Let me ask you this, Kale. Before you got into real estate investing, did you have a mentor?
No, I didn't.
Okay, so then you learned the hard way. So then
Yep.
did you go get a mentor after that?
So I'm actually working on developing a mentorship relationship right now. But no.
But Tyler, did you get a visit from Serena?
Yeah.
That's okay, man. We're real people. We live real lives.
Yep, exactly.
They were grabbing the dogs that were up in the room with me. So you did end up going and getting a mentor, you said?
No, I'm actually working on a mentorship. There's a through my day job network, right? So in working with one of the distribution companies, he said, my daughter, she plays soccer with another guy's daughter, and this guy is a massive syndicator. I'm not going to say his name over the air, but right before COVID happened, I was supposed to fly down to Dallas and then drive up to McKinney, Texas, and we were going to go fishing out on the lake for 2 days, and just be able to start opening up that ball of wax. And he's an older individual, and he's looking at kind of that Maslow's fifth hierarchy of needs, which is giving back. And yeah, so we're starting to unpeel that onion. But over the last 2.5 years, and even I would say 6-month spin up period before buying our first property, no, it's been, my mentor has been podcasts, have been books, have been, just learning from all these different pieces, thinking about how to put those together in my plan. I'm a strategic planner. Okay, now how do I now put that pen to paper and execute?
So, but it was a lot of self-knowledge though. You didn't just jump in, like you followed the podcast, you listened to a lot of them, you probably spent on YouTube. You learned on your own how to leverage your 401k. Nobody taught you that, but it was probably 20 to 40 hours of diving into knowledge to figure out exactly how to do that. And then consulting with your 401k, the people that handle your 401k and different things to actually figure out what to do with that, to come up with that game plan.
Yeah, so I'm not the first person to ever create this strategy, right? So
it's out there. Knowledge is free.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So heard it on a podcast, and I was like, wow, whoa, that could be a game changer here, especially as we're scrounging around for money in the very beginning, all of our money in, the School of Hard Knocks house.
Podcasts are such an amazing asset that we all have that not a lot of people take advantage of.
Completely agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're drawing from other people's personal experience. I mean, that's where lessons are learned. That's how knowledge is gained. We talked about it before. It's, you can only have skills and abilities until you're around people with knowledge.
Bingo. KSAs.
Yeah, I just learned from the school of Kale English, brother. What you know about that?
Nick's over here writing everything down, trying to figure out how you can leverage a bunch of money.
I have my notepad open on my computer right now. Are you serious?
Yeah, just typing it all in.
I'm a conversationalist. You guys are investors, all right? Just keep feeding me, all right?
Yeah, we'll keep it going.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I got off of even what I was talking about. You made me like kind of feel like I was doing something important for a second. But yeah, I mean, I think we all share the common core of just relentless pursuit of knowledge and for bettering our situation. And just being in control of where your life takes you next. So where do you see yourself going the rest of 2020, even at 2021, Kale?
Yeah, so breaking into 2020, we had a total of 16 doors. And as I said, we're up to 23. But my bare minimum is to hit at least 32 doors. In my mind, I really think about that as the cash flow coming in off of 32 units. That's roughly about $10,000 a month. With that cash flow, that allows us to be able to have a safety net, have a cushion. So you take a look at the time period that we're in right now. COVID-19, folks aren't paying. Now all of a sudden, vacancy becomes an issue. Now all of a sudden, not being able to fill a vacant unit or collect rent becomes an issue. And you really have to think about how you're going to mitigate some of those risks. So we got together at the Christiana Hilton, the four of us. So the collective two companies, me being the time member between the two. But the collective two companies came together and we said, all right, what do we believe this safety net needs to look like? Well, so we go back and forth. It's lunchtime. So we go to Firebirds, have a couple beers, and all of a sudden we now know what the safety net is. I guess it's a little liquid inspiration. And the liquid inspiration was 30 units. 30 units to be able to say, all right, we have at least $10,000 a month cash flow coming in the door to be able to kind of curb whatever comes down the line for larger units. Now that risk model will of course increase as the number of units increase, but that's really our launch pad. So going back to your question, where are we going in 2020? Where are we going in 2021? Well, 2020 is at least amassing 32 units at bare minimum. Frankly, I'm going to kick myself in the tail if that's all we get. I'm really going to be sad with myself if that's the case.
Fantastic.
Into 2021, that's really the launching pad for multifamily units between 30 and 50 units that we're going to be pursuing.
So that's a good point to actually talk about, because that's my end goal, of course, is multifamily, whether, in that 30 to 50. I own a fourplex, I own a twoplex now. I love them. They're great units, but eventually I want to get into 20 plus, where you just have one unit that holds 20 plus apartments and you manage that. So it's interesting to talk about that, because we both have the end game strategy of that's where we want to get to. My ultimate goal is to have a larger one, 100 plus, 200 plus. And it doesn't even have to be local. It could be in Dallas. It could be in Nashville. It could be in, any of those markets. It could be in Kansas City, Missouri. But one of those larger spaces. And so what I'm doing is I'm building that equity through my houses and the cash flow to ultimately get to a point where I don't want to own a bunch of single family homes. I want to own the bigger apartment building complex. So what do you think about that?
Well, I would say that single family homes have their purpose. I would say that multifamily properties have their purpose. And the purpose of a single family home is to build equity. That's where you build equity in a single family home, or where it's probably easiest to do so. Cash flow wise, and thinking about cap rates, thinking about NOI wise, as you're branching over into the commercial multifamily state, and driving on the efficiencies of everything being under one single roof, that really drives cash flow, right? So on one side, you have equity, and what do you need in order to buy an asset? You're buying a business essentially in buying an apartment complex. So you buy an apartment complex, which is essentially a business, and what do you need to get there? Well, you need equity, right? You need to either be able to sell those single families, 1031 exchange them. You need to be able to leverage that equity in the properties. You may continue to hold them, but you need that equity to be able to go forward into the multifamily space. So it's kind of like, crawling, walking, then finally running. Now you're running and jumping, and you're off to the 2021 Olympics out in Tokyo that have been for. Yeah. One other thing I would say about diversification, though, right? I actually just heard this on a podcast not too long ago, and it really spun up the way I think about things. So are we going to be, what does diversification actually mean? And the guest that was on this particular podcast he put it so eloquently. And this is what's really going to start driving some of our strategic approaches going forward. He said, multiple different asset types. So whether that be single family, whether that be multifamily, whether that be storage, whether that be mobile home parks. So you can have multiple different asset types, which result in diversification. You can also have geographic diversification. So just like Tyler was saying, maybe we'll go after Nashville, maybe we'll go after Dallas, or Kansas City, Missouri, or whatever that looks like. But I really think that
I dropped 3 markets, and I mentioned those 3 markets because I'm already looking into them. So it's not, they're great markets.
Sure.
I know that you've already looked into out-of-state markets as well.
Yep, and I'll be wide open with this. It's San Antonio, Texas. It's a place where I used to live for 8 years. Very familiar with that. It's a bustling medical community down there and small startup community down there. It's very heavy in tourism. So a lot of the Airbnb or the VRBO short-term rental markets are actually suffering really bad right now, which is just a great indicator of some great deals that are going to be coming down the line.
So just to touch on different things, there's going to be a lot of people that at some point in their lifetime might catch a snippet of a show or catch a snippet of a podcast or talk with somebody that's worked in real estate investment, and they think, you know what, that'd be a good idea. But I think in the long term, and especially after being around guys like you that work in this full time, very few people are ever going to close their first deal. What does it take? What type of person, day to day, do you have to be to really be able to get into this business and then turn around and be successful at it? Let's start with Kale.
I would say that if there's anyone who doesn't have the gumption, right, who doesn't have the self-motivation and just the willingness to risk it all, then you need to partner up. And frankly, I was that person. I didn't want to risk $40,000 all in one go into my first hand in real estate. Now, probably I would have, but my wife certainly would not have. Let's be honest here. So she felt most comfortable with me going in with additional partners to be able to spread that risk.
Mm-hmm.
And what that allowed us to do is really pull one another along and hold one another accountable. That's another great thing about a partnership, is if I say to Tyler, hey, Tyler, I'm going to go out and, never bought a house before, never bought a rental investment before. I say, hey, Tyler, in the next 3 months, I am definitely going to buy something. Tyler's going to be calling me up every single week. Where's this at? Where's this at? Where's this at? And I either have to swallow my pride or I have to perform. And darn it, I'm going to perform because it's do or die.
Perfect. What do you think, Tyler?
I think it's the same way. I mean, if you're getting into real estate investing, you have to have that, eat or don't eat mentality where you want to eat. You have to go immerse yourself into wanting to gain all the knowledge that you can from this business. And then also on the back end, be able to put the action into place where you want to get it done. I was the kind of person where I just said, well, you know what? I've been at the bottom. Don't come from anything. I had to build everything, my business and everything from there. So if I went back to that, I would just start back over. So I did risk it all. I did put all my eggs out there, and it worked out. I was able to successfully flip a few homes and get started. So it's really that killer instinct that you have to put into this business that it will determine if you're successful or not. You can't just halfway get into it. You have to be all in and have that mentality that you're going to win and put everything out there to just gain as much knowledge as you can, learn from people, and do things like this to just educate yourself.
Yeah. I'll tell you, even after the School of Hard Knocks house, right? I would drum that up as a failure. But where do you learn from? You learn from your failures. So you can't go into it saying, okay, I'm going to do one and I'm going to dip my toe into the water. It really has to be a mentality of, this year or in the next 2 or 3 years, I'm going to buy 10. That's truly my mentality, is that the fat lady doesn't sing until, you hit that broader number that you put a goal on, and it has to be more than 1 or 2 or even 3. Because by the time you hit 2 or 3, you're going to look back and you're going to say, okay, I did this wrong. I'm doing this right now. I did this wrong. I'm doing this right now. And, oh, by the way, all that stuff that I was really, really worried about wasn't that big of a deal.
Yeah.
See, I'm the type of person at the end of the day, and why this business is super interesting to me, is that I'm a true believer in that the harder that I work, the more hustle that I put in, the more effort that I show, the more return I'm going to get, the more money I'm going to make, the more, experience I'm going to gain, and the more return I'm going to see. And so all entrepreneurship is extremely interesting to me. Real estate investment being one that, a majority of Americans are a member of because they're a homeowner. It's something we talked about in the first episode, Tyler, that it's a common saying that, your house will be the biggest investment you ever make in your life. But people, I think, fail to make the connection between owning a home and it being an investment. And that's the business that you guys are in. And it's just weird that the majority of the population doesn't look at it that way or doesn't know more about it. So it's been hugely fascinating to me to watch you work, Tyler, and to learn more about it. Amazing, more than interesting. And I'll admit at times a bit confusing to listen to you talk about it, Kale. Super smart guy. And I thought I was hella smart. So
you can always learn from somebody else.
You can always learn from somebody else. And maybe someone will learn something from this. I'll tell you what, if someone's watching and they made it all the way to this point in it, you either are just as fascinated by I am, or you're truly trying to learn something. And, you guys are definitely good people to learn from. So I appreciate you spending time as always.
No, definitely. This has been good.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Any parting words of wisdom for anybody that's still with us here, Kale?
I think it all comes down to what really drives you. And there's a Gary Keller book that said the one thing, right? I'm an avid audiobook reader. I actually hate to read, even though maybe because I read government contracts, for the day job for so long, maybe that's why I hate to actually read words, but I like to listen to audiobooks. And there's a book out there by Gary Keller, The One Thing. And what's really going to drive you? I went throughout my corporate career, and it was after 1 year with a small startup that I spent 304 days a night out on the road. And there was a big payday at the end of that. And I had to face a crossroads. Am I going to have a family to be able to share that early retirement with? Or am I going to be a lone millionaire? Well, I chose my family in that. So what I would say here is that be intentional about what you're doing and how you're going to achieve it. Set those goals and make sure that you have that one true reason why you want to accomplish those goals, and revisit your successes along the way to keep you motivated.
That's it. I really couldn't agree more. That's going to be my new word, seriously, Kale. And I'll try and give you credit as often as possible. It's just, you know what? Let's be intentional about what we're doing from now on. What's the real plan here? What's the step by step? Am I just chasing shiny objects? I got to take a hard look at myself in the mirror when we're done with this podcast. What do you think, Tyler?
No, that was great. I mean, he hit it on the head. So I think the other important thing to understand from both Kale and I's first investments is, if at first you don't succeed, keep going, because you learn and you get better, and then you'll succeed. You don't win on the first shot, right? So you got to keep trying and get better. And I think that's important. I didn't know that story about the vision tree, so it's important to understand. You got to keep going.
Humble beginnings, rarely going to hit a home run on the first shot, but
Right.
relentless, and fast and furious, right, Kale?
There you go. I like
That's what I'm
it.
talking about. Well, hey man, it's been a distinct pleasure. It truly has. Thank you, Kale. And I've really enjoyed it. And Tyler, it hasn't been a bad hour spent, as it never is.
No.
And if you're still checking this out, appreciate it. We're starting from scratch every week, and look forward to tuning in next time. All right, guys. Thanks again.
Appreciate it. Thanks,
All
Nick.
right. Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Tyler.
Thanks,
See ya.
Bye.